We can't have you panhandling our donors." The words sliced through the champagne-scented air of the Harbor Grand Ballroom like a blade. Marcus, the event director, stood with his arms crossed, clipboard tucked under one like a weapon of authority. His eyes swept over the old man before him with undisguised contempt. Dean Hamilton, 86 years old, did not flinch. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, his worn tweed suit a relic among the tuxedos and evening gowns. "What's that?" Marcus sneered, pointing at a tarnished pin inside Dean's wallet. "Some prize from a cereal box?" For one heartbeat, Dean was no longer in the ballroom. He was on a frozen hillside. Mud, blood, a dying boy pressing warm metal into his palm. "Don't let them forget, Sergeant." The pin wasn't a prize. It was a promise written in sacrifice. Would anyone recognize the truth before it was too late? The Navy Veterans Relief Fund annual gala was the kind of event where power wore cufflinks and influence arrived in limousines. The Harbor Grand Hotel's ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, each table draped in navy blue linen, each centerpiece a miniature bronze statue of an anchor. Guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled beneath banners proclaiming support for those who served. Tonight's goal was ambitious: raise $2 million for veteran housing and mental health services. The irony would soon become unbearable. Dean Hamilton had entered quietly, his ticket clutched in one weathered hand. His red tweed suit was clean, pressed with military precision, but it had seen decades of wear. The fabric held memories: a grandson's college graduation, his wife's funeral 3 years prior, countless Veterans Day ceremonies in small-town America where he was just another face in the crowd. He preferred it that way. Anonymity was armor. But Marcus had noticed him immediately. In a room full of wealth and performance, Dean stood out like a wrong note in an orchestra. The event director approached with the confidence of a man who believed his clipboard granted him dominion over who belonged and who did not. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Dean's pale bluey eyes settled on Marcus with the calm of deep water. "I have a ticket." "Let's see it then, and some identification." The exchange drew attention like blood and water. A woman in an emerald dress paused mid-sip. A hedge fund manager nudged his companion. Whispers began their cruel work. "Look at his suit. Is he homeless? How did security miss this?" Dean produced his ticket and driver's license with deliberate slowness. Marcus snatched the ticket, scanning it with theatrical suspicion. "This was issued to a D. Hamilton. That's not you." "My name is Dean Hamilton." Marcus barely glanced at the license. His attention had locked onto something else inside the worn leather wallet. A small metal pin tarnished with age, shaped like a shield with a phantom cat etched into its surface. It sat in a fabric sleeve, positioned like something sacred. Marcus smirked, the expression of a man who believed himself clever. "What's that? Some prize from a cereal box? A little toy to prove you're one of the good old boys?" He looked around, trying to recruit the nearby guests into his mockery. "Sir, this is a serious event for real heroes, not a clubhouse for whatever it is you are." The insult landed not as a wound, but as a trigger. For one terrible second, the ballroom dissolved. The perfume became cordite. The murmurs became screams in a language Dean still heard in nightmares. The pin grew warm in his memory, pressed into his palm by a boy dying in Korean mud. "Security!" Marcus snapped his fingers like summoning servants. Two men in black suits detached from the wall. One young and eager, one older, his face lined with the weariness of a man who had learned that appearances deceive. Near the catering station, Lance Corporal Davies stood frozen in his dress blues. He was supposed to represent the cause this gala celebrated. Instead, he was watching a living symbol of that cause being treated like garbage. He had seen the pin. He did not recognize the exact insignia, but he recognized what it meant. History, honor, sacrifice. Protocol said stay out of it. Instinct said do something. Davies pulled out his phone, fingers flying to a contact. "Colonel Vance." The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. "Vance?" "Colonel, it's Lance Corporal Davies from the volunteer detail." Davies cupped the phone, his voice urgent but controlled. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but you need to get down to the main ballroom right now." "What is it, Davies?" "They're throwing a man out, sir. An old gentleman. The event director thinks he's a vagrant." Davies paused, watching the security guards close in on Dean. "Sir, there's something about him, the way he carries himself. And I saw his wallet. He has an old unit pin. I think they're making a mistake. A very big mistake." Colonel Vance's tone shifted, patient but firm. A lot of old vets come to these things, son. I can't intervene in every dispute with hotel security. Sir, Davies's voice tightened. They called him by name. It's Hamilton, Dean Hamilton. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. It felt like an eternity. When the colonel's voice returned, all casual authority had evaporated, replaced by cold, sharp alarm. Stay right where you are, Corporal. Do not let him leave that building. A muffled exchange followed. We're on our way. The call ended. 30 feet away, the final humiliation was unfolding. The security guards had dragged Dean across the threshold into the grand foyer. Marcus followed like a predator, savoring a kill. He positioned himself in front of Dean, blocking the path to the street, ready to deliver his crushing verdict. Let this be a lesson to you, Marcus said, his voice dripping with manufactured superiority. There are places for people like you, and this is not one of them. We have standards here. We are celebrating genuine American heroes tonight, men of substance and standing. We can't have their honor tainted by your presence. He gestured toward the street with theatrical disgust. Now, if you don't leave the premises immediately, my next call will be to the police. Perhaps they can find you a bed for the night, or better yet, get you a psychiatric evaluation. Clearly, you're confused about where you belong. It was the ultimate overreach. He was not just ejecting a man, he was erasing his identity, his history, his worth. The older guard flinched. The younger one tightened his grip on Dean's arm, knuckles white. Then came the sound. Sharp, rhythmic footsteps on marble, a sudden shift in the air, like the temperature dropping before a storm. Marcus turned, annoyed, ready to dismiss whoever dared interrupt his moment of triumph. His expression froze, then melted into slack-jawed disbelief. Striding toward them was Admiral Thompson. 4 stars glittered on his collar. His face was a mask of cold, absolute fury. Admiral Thompson moved through the foyer like a battleship cutting through water. Colonel Vance flanked his right, 2 junior officers his left. Their formation parted the gathered crowd with unstoppable momentum. The air crackled with an authority that made Marcus's manufactured power seem like a child playing dress-up. They stopped 5 feet from the pathetic scene. The Admiral's eyes, sharp as broken glass, swept past Marcus as if he were furniture. They ignored the security guards entirely. They locked onto one person and one person only. Dean Hamilton. The younger guard, still gripping Dean's arm, suddenly felt the weight of those 4 stars pressing down on his hand like a physical force. He released Dean as if burned. In the cavernous, silent foyer, Admiral Thompson took 3 more steps forward. He stopped directly in front of the old man in the worn tweed suit. For a moment, the 2 men simply looked at each other, the decorated leader of the modern Navy and the forgotten ghost of its past. Then, with a precision that was both breathtaking and damning, Admiral Thompson's body snapped to the position of attention. His right hand came up in a salute so sharp, so perfect, it seemed to cut the air itself. It was a gesture of profound, unconditional respect, the highest honor one warrior could bestow upon another. Sergeant Major, the Admiral's voice boomed, echoing off the marble walls. It is a profound honor to be in your presence tonight. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's face became a canvas of confusion and dawning horror. The security guards looked at each other in panic. The guests who had been whispering moments before were now statues, mouths hanging open. Phones began to rise, not to mock, but to record, to bear witness. The Admiral held his salute, eyes locked on Dean's. Dean gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod, acknowledging the gesture. He did not salute back. That was not his place. Not anymore. He simply accepted the honor with the quiet grace he had shown all evening. After a long moment, the Admiral lowered his hand. He turned to the assembled crowd, his voice ringing with power that commanded total attention. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who have forgotten, allow me to introduce you. This is Sergeant Major Dean Hamilton. He paused, letting the ranks settle like snow on frozen ground. Some of you tonight donated generously to build monuments of stone and bronze. Well, you are standing in the presence of a living one. He placed a hand gently on Dean's shoulder. In the winter of 1950, on a frozen nightmare of a hill in Korea that history has forgotten, this man, then a sergeant, held the line. He and 6 surviving Marines stood against an entire battalion for 2 days. Not for glory, not for a medal, but for the men to their left and right. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Sergeant Hamilton alone and still fighting, using the enemy's own weapons because his were empty. The press called him the Ghost of Hill 734 because no one believed a single man could have survived, let alone prevailed. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. The Admiral's voice grew more personal, thick with emotion he rarely showed. 30 years ago, my own father, a young captain at the time, lay bleeding out in a jungle halfway around the world. His platoon had been ambushed. Their comms were down. All hope was lost. One man crawled through a quarter-mile of enemy fire, taking 2 bullets in the process to drag my father and 3 others to safety. His eyes were now shining with unshed tears. That man was Sergeant Major Dean Hamilton. The Admiral's voice cracked slightly. He never received the Medal of Honor he was recommended for. He said others were more deserving. He took a quiet Navy cross and faded back into the ranks, asking for no recognition, no reward. He said the lives of his men were the only medal he needed. Then the Admiral turned his gaze, now as cold and unforgiving as a glacier, directly onto Marcus. His voice dropped, becoming a low, lethal weapon. You. The single word dripped with contempt. You stand here in your $500 suit running a fundraiser for veterans, and you can't recognize true valor when it is standing 2 feet in front of you. You mistake a lifetime of sacrifice for vagrancy. You confuse honor with a bank statement. He took 1 step toward the terrified event director. You have not just insulted this man. You have insulted my father's memory. You have insulted every man and woman who has ever worn the uniform of this nation. You are a disgrace to the very cause you claim to serve. He didn't need to fire him. He had already stripped him of every shred of authority and respect he possessed. The Admiral turned back to Dean. His voice softened. Admiral, Dean said quietly, his voice clear in the stunned silence. The young man was only trying to do his job, protecting the integrity of the event. He looked at Marcus, not with anger, but with something that looked like pity. Sometimes people get confused. They focus so hard on protecting the house that they forget about the people inside. The uniform changes, the mission changes, but the core duty to protect what's important, that never ends. He just made a mistake about what was important tonight. It was a lesson, not a rebuke, an act of grace so profound it was more damning than any punishment. As Dean spoke, he thought of the tarnished pin, the Phantom Cat insignia. It had belonged to Captain Thompson, the Admiral's father, pressed into Dean's hand in that muddy jungle with a dying man's final words. Get them out, Sergeant, and if you ever see my boy, you tell him his old man was proud. The pin was not just a memento, it was a testament, a direct link between the man being honored and the man who had been humiliated. The video captured on a dozen phones went viral within hours. By morning, it had 17 million views. The comments section became a tidal wave of outrage and reverence. Veterans across the country shared it with trembling hands. Active duty service members watched it in barracks and on deployment. The hashtag Honor Isn't Always in Uniform trended for 3 days straight. The Navy Veterans Relief Fund, facing a public relations catastrophe, issued a formal and groveling apology. Marcus was summarily fired. His career in event management evaporated overnight. No amount of resume polishing could erase what the internet had immortalized. At Admiral Thompson's personal insistence, the charity's board mandated a new training program for all staff and volunteers. Colonel Vance designed the seminar himself, titled Honor Isn't Always in Uniform, Recognizing Our Unassuming Heroes. The first slide was a candid photo of Dean Hamilton standing in the foyer, dignity intact despite the humiliation surrounding him. 3 weeks later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, Dean sat in his usual spot at May's Coffee House, a neighborhood shop 2 blocks from his modest apartment. He was reading the newspaper, nursing a black coffee, when the bell over the door chimed. A young man walked in, hesitant and humbled. It was Marcus. He wore a simple polo shirt with the logo of Miller's Landscaping Company embroidered on the chest. Manual labor, honest work. A far cry from the world of champagne and clipboards. He saw Dean and froze. For a moment, it looked like he might turn and flee. Instead, he took a deep breath and walked to the small table. Mr. Hamilton? His voice was barely a whisper. Dean looked up from his paper, expression unreadable. Sir, there's nothing I can say, but I wanted to find you. I needed to look you in the eye and tell you that I am so sorry for everything. The apology was quiet, sincere, stripped of all former arrogance. Dean studied him for a long moment. Then he simply nodded toward the empty chair opposite him. Sit down, son. He raised his hand to the girl behind the counter. Get this young man a coffee. Marcus sat. They didn't speak of the incident again. They sat in shared, quiet understanding. A lesson had been brutally taught and humbly learned. When Dean finished his paper, he stood, gave Marcus a simple nod, and walked out into the morning sun. Just another old man in a world that rarely saw the giants walking among them. His honor needed no gala, no applause, no recognition. It was, and always had been, carried quietly within. If the journey of this soldier touched your heart, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to BR Veteran Stories to hear more tales of courage and sacrifice. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that true honor doesn't always wear a uniform. And thank you for watching.